2 years ago to the date was one of the worst days of my entire life, if not the worst. You see, my then 8-year-old son has battled mental and emotional challenges since he was 18 months old. If you can imagine, the pandemic didn't do us any favors. I continuously reached out to his IEP team regarding services, but was turned down every step of the way, right up until about the time he was taken on a quote-unquote hospital hold. Shortly prior, we were finally approved for the necessary services to help us get back on track. As a mother, I was definitely struggling, and I reached out to friends, doctors,
I want to die!
the IEP team to no avail. I was left with little choice but to contact 911 on a few occasions, take my son into the hospital, call the crisis team. Most of the agencies I've reached out to had the excuse of the pandemic, so as it appears, we were the forgotten class during these lockdowns. Each time I called for help, I was treated like a criminal, a bad parent, or as if my cries for help were vexatious. I begged for help from my parents, my son's paternal grandparents. The only one to really offer anything was my best friend in Reading, but her offer was for him to temporarily stay with her and her family. My son's my world, and I simply couldn't be away from him. 2 years ago today was one of the last times I saw him up until recently. Up until recently, I saw and spoke to my own son a total of 2.5 hours. 2 visits in total. It was only a few weeks ago I was able to begin seeing him, and that's only once a week for an hour, in a 6x6 room with 3 social workers staring at us.
Chastise me, tell me I can't be a fucking good parent or whatever. My dog's are terrified. I'm gonna assume this is how he ends up with CPS, because he's outside telling random people he's locked out of the house.
He'd go outside and refuse to come inside, so I installed cameras so I could watch him. If I got close to him,
you need to
he would
be online.
Throw things at me, or hit me, or lunge at me.
Doesn't have any place to sleep. Doesn't have any toys. Doesn't have running water or a bathroom.
2 years ago today, I was left with very little choice but to call for help.
I've been told everything from, that I'm crazy and nothing's wrong with my child, that my son is neglected. He's come and tell me that, why are you calling? He's your responsibility. Had the district write to me, why is he not in school? Well, let's see what happens when
And that call for help resulted in my son.
Wrigley, I've asked you quite a few times. You need to come. What is this? Okay, so you jumped over the fence again and left my house.
Being traumatically ripped away from me. His family. His service dog.
You think this is funny? It means that you can control this, which means you're choosing bad behavior.
February 19th, 2021, I called 911 for help as I was instructed by the crisis team the day before. The crisis team I called, and they took 8 hours to get to my home.
You like knowing someone's there to make sure you're okay and protect you and keep you safe? Keep you out of bad places?
Okay!
At that time, my son was on my lap falling asleep, sucking his thumb, and I did not feel it was appropriate for him to be taken anywhere. I didn't want him to endure unnecessary trauma as he was already stable. I made a promise to the women who came out to my house.
I don't know what's up, huh? Fuck, me too.
The crisis team that I would call for help. It continued into the morning, and I did. Which turned out to be the biggest mistake of my entire life.
Hurt my child, I would lay down in front of a bus for him. But these are reasons why. Because they reach out for help and they don't get any help. How many people could sit here for 7 hours listening to their kid tell them how fat and ugly they are and how stupid they are and throw things at them that could actually kill them? Tired.
I was exhausted. And I didn't know what to do. I felt as if I had already exhausted all my resources. And at every turn we were being denied for anything and everything.
As you can see, I can't even get near him without getting things thrown at me.
The lack of services available for those with mental health needs during the pandemic were near non-existent. But it's not your government that's...
How many people could actually do that?
It's those affected by it.
There's not a lot of people, and to be honest, I wouldn't be able to do it at all if I wasn't on antidepressants. This is just, it's unacceptable. So the police are currently at my house. I called them just like I was instructed to do. The first thing I was told is he's my responsibility and I need to take him in myself. I've gotten into 2 car accidents. They're degrading me, talking down to me. Wrigley's telling them that he's got a service dog. I don't allow him to see all sorts of things. He's not taken care of. So this is why people don't reach out for help. And for those who don't know, none of that's true. As he's saying those things, he's looking out from behind them, sticking his tongue out at me, and laughing. So, thank you to everyone who's offered things to us or offered help. Wrigley is on a 51-54 hold at the hospital in LA. But I was advised that there's a pretty good chance that he won't be able to go. These that he might have to go to, and that's not really the help I'm looking for. I don't want my son to not be here with me. And I have a migraine. So apparently I'm not good enough to be daughter. Not good enough most of my life. Now I'm not good enough to be a fucking mom.
The County of Los Angeles blame shifted the impact of their unconstitutional pandemic orders onto me, creating insane false allegations against me, and attempting to convince me that I was some kind of monster, a terrible mother.
You know, some of this shit must be true because I'm sitting here fucking by myself.
And I must say, they were pretty close to succeeding. I have been through a lifetime of trauma. Something wouldn't allow them to succeed.
I'm sorry, I've never been good enough
to
for
sever that
anybody
unbreakable bond
life.
my son and I have with one another.
So, I have to bring him home. It's been a few days since I talked to him, and they allowed me to Zoom him, and this is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever had to deal with. He just cried the whole time.
So, how did a mother like me allow for this to happen? Well, obviously I didn't allow for it to happen. I was coerced into speaking to CPS under the impression that they were going to help my family, under the promise that they were going to offer wraparound services, respite care, etc. I had recently just got approved through his IEP for a one-on-one to come to our house. However, so February 19th was a Friday, and that Monday we actually had an interview with Starview Behavioral, which is a wraparound service. I simply needed help getting through the weekend because we were having such a difficult time. I did agree to my son being transported to the hospital to be evaluated. Evaluated, I was called and told that he was on a hold. Like I said, I came to find out over a year later that that was never accurate and he wasn't actually on a hold. What happened was the women who came to my house were well aware that I was a strong mother that was going to protect my son at all costs, and they were not going to get him away from the crap mommy of his. They lied so I didn't pick him up so that they could get their petition signed to keep my baby. Something else I didn't know until maybe a year or so later is that the writ petition application used in order to get a judicial signature alleged physical and sexual abuse. However, the checkbox to ask the judicial officer also for an evaluation for physical and sexual abuse was not checked. How that is not in contradiction with one another is beyond me. I didn't find this out till about a year later, and I honestly really don't like talking about it because it's the most grotesque, disgusting thing that could ever be alleged against anybody, let alone me. There's no basis for this whatsoever. It's a complete, perjured, blatant lie to both physical and sexual abuse. How am I supposed to even know this when I don't get the petition until a year later? How am I supposed to even know what the allegations are against me when I receive the report within the very hour that I have my first hearing? It's all a scheme. It's not a broken system. It's designed that way. I often get asked, but Kristen, why? Well, my son has a $95,000 a year price tag on his head. If you're unaware of the Social Security Act, Title IV-E, and Title IV-D funding, please do yourself a favor and brush up on it. So, if you've listened this far, I'm sure you're ready to hear what the allegations that were used against me in order to keep my child actually were. And I'll read them right out of the report. The child was medically neglected. For those who know my family know this couldn't be further from the truth. The child exhibits self-harming behaviors and aggressive behaviors towards others, and mother has a limited ability to provide appropriate care and supervision for the child and has failed to ensure that the child participates in consistent mental health treatment. It sounds like a little blame shifting there. This one's my favorite one. This one's my favorite one because it has changed throughout the entire 2 years in almost every report. So this one is that I physically abused my son by intimidating him with a machete. Here's the machete. Let me give you a little backstory really, really quick. The machete was hanging behind my door for probably almost a year, and why? My car was broken into and my purse was stolen. Yes, I'm a dummy. I left my purse in the car. And I'm a single mom. So, I don't have a firearm in my home for obvious reasons. I have a child and I garden. I have 9 fruit trees. We hike. We camp. We all know this. So I just put the machete in my room. It's in a holster. It has a little lock on it and everything. I assume, and I can't be confident in this because I haven't had the opportunity to really speak to my kid, but I assume that this was just something that came up when the officer or deputy was in the room with my son alone for the 2 hours or whatever he was in here and was like, oh, a machete, what's that? And they came up with this. Now, they have switched it from I would intimidate my son with the machete to I'm so afraid of my son that I sleep with the machete, back to I intimidate him with the machete, to it's been all kinds of wacky things. It's humorous. It's so sad, but it's humorous. It's humorous because mother has put her child in detrimental danger by excluding him from the home. Also not true. As you could see with video camera footage. And perhaps the best yet is mother herself suffers from mental and emotional problems, including anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, which renders her unable to care for her son that she cared for by herself for 9 full years. 9 full years. Such mental and emotional problems on the part of the mother endangers the child's physical and mental health and places the child at risk of serious physical harm, damage, and danger. No articulation on what that harm, risk, or danger is. Also states that mother refuses to treat her mental health and refuses to use medication or acknowledge she has mental health concerns. I pointed out earlier in the video to listen to what I say when I said that I was on antidepressants. Some of y'all are new here, but I happen to live in the same city that I was born and raised, so I know a lot of the same people for 20, 30 years, and for those who know me, at least for half of my life. I'm going to say a lot more than half of my life, but at least half of my life, I have been a very outspoken mental health advocate. This is the most insane, complete, twisted allegations ever. They do is they grab a bunch of stuff, they throw it at the wall, and they see what sticks. In my case, the only thing that has stuck is my son's mental and behavioral health and my quote-unquote lack of compliance. Now, there is no lack of compliance. I did everything that was asked of me within a few months. They just don't like me. 2 years later, they still are absent that something that they need in order to prove to anybody that any of this was necessary. I truly wish that I could articulate everything and every aspect about this case in a short video, but it is just virtually absolutely. Therefore, I am just sticking to the basics and the very inception of all of this, which was 100% fraudulent. My goodness, don't they bear the burden to prove all of these allegations? Well, I mean, it says so on some piece of paper somewhere, on the computer, on Google, on some WIC codes and stuff like that, but dependency law is whatever the judge wants it to be that day, at that time. And that's just the way it is because there is no accountability, there is no oversight, and the courts are closed, which means they can do whatever they want and they get away with it. I've seen it and I'm living. Due process of any sort does not exist. If you dare exert your rights, convert it into a crime and you are treated like a criminal, because that is all I have done, is assert my rights and demand my child be freed of this tyranny and trauma and abuse. And instead, I'm simply retaliated against again and again. Additionally, my son had an IEP, which is an individualized education plan of the ADA. The IEP team in the school is aware of what's going on that's hindering the child from a public education, then it is their duty and obligation to intervene. By the emails I've already posted, it's safe to say the school was well aware of what was going on. To provide my son what was necessary and what appropriate services were going to help him succeed. 2 years later, I often wonder how many people are aware of the complete inadequacy in mental health services for children, especially when the amount and percentage of those impacted with some kind of divergent neurotypical learning disability and so on is growing so rapidly. There is a severe lack of mental health services, therapy, etc. for children. So many are advocating for gun control and worried about the mass shootings, and I just want parents and others to know and be completely aware that the problem isn't the firearm. Our children, we deserve help, we deserve access to it, and we deserve not to be punished for asking for it. Termination of my parental rights is scheduled for just over a month from now. I am begging all who listen to share our story, to free my son from the prison, from the cruel and unusual punishment that he's being forced to endure, to bring him home where he belongs and wants to be. Please, help us free Wrigley.